Everybody for tuning in with Thom. I have a great guest today, and he doesn't know the first time I saw him, but it was way back at a little club called the Tralf in Buffalo, New York. Will Evankovich was sitting behind two guys that were playing guitars and singing these classic songs, and that of course was Shaw Blades on the Influence tour, and one of the best live performances I've ever seen by anybody ever. And
Oh,
you were said you were in the background and kind of they joked with you a little bit here and there, but when you popped up later in the Styx world, I was like, I remember that name and I remember that guy. You must have some very fond memories of that Shaw Blades tour.
it was so much fun. It was, there really wasn't any rules as far as, or weren't any rules to us playing live. And so sometimes, much to the tour manager's chagrin, we would play like 3 hours and we were supposed to play 90 minutes. And it was like a campfire, everyone's just throwing songs around. And that was kind of the spirit of Shaw Blades, was all of the influences that those guys had. And so it was just a party nonstop on stage. Loved every minute of it.
Yeah, and as somebody who was fortunate enough to attend one of those shows, I wish there was a good commercial live recording of it available somewhere. It was just such, I mean, between the Styx material, the Night Ranger material, Shaw solo material, and then all those other just classic hits done so well. That was quite an evening of music.
My wife loved it when we did Time of the Season. That's one of her favorite songs. And that's like songs like that and Carry On by the way, it's amazing. So
Now, you are officially a member of Styx, and you got on their radar for people that don't know. I mean, you started working with them, I believe, on the Mission, or at least during that era, and then right after Crash of the Crown, you became the official seventh member. And you're not the newest member anymore. That's Terry Gowan, but we'll get to that in just a moment as well. When when did it come up? I mean, and were you surprised by it where they had said, I know you were on stage for part of the shows beforehand, but then at some point they're like, well, here's our seventh guy. Did you sense it was coming down the road, or were you just like, wow, this is incredible?
well, I was working with a Guess Who for about 7 or 8 years up until that point, and then COVID hit. And with the new record, I think the band felt that they needed some more help. So, rounding out the guitar or mandolin or extra keys or whatever they needed. They wanted to fill it out, and so when the phone call came, I didn't expect it, but I was pleasantly surprised. And of course, they felt like my band away from my band anyway. I had been working with the guys since 2014, so I knew all of them really well. I had played some shows, the Mission shows, that they needed my help in the same regard, and it felt like coming home to me because I'd worked with them creatively for so long.
When was your first Styx concert? Just out of curiosity.
Well, probably back when I met Tommy. I didn't see them before that because it just for whatever reason it didn't work out. But so around the time of Shaw Blades, around 2006, 7, that's when I saw them for the first time. And of course, I've owned the records, A Grand Illusion and Pieces of Eight. And I don't get out to a lot of shows. I should, but even from years past, it's just not much of a concert goer. So it's probably why I'd never seen him before that.
That's not unusual for working musicians because I mean, I guess it's kind of like, if you work in a restaurant, you don't necessarily go to a lot of other restaurants. If you're getting some form of satisfaction doing it. But yeah, it's and again, I mean, the current lineup, and we did briefly mention with Terry Gowan and then coming in with Lawrence as well. Man, what a great lineup. I mean, you guys as seven piece. Now I haven't seen. I got to see Terry once playing on bass. I believe it was at the Seneca Niagara Casino or somewhere near the Buffalo area. But
Right.
it's, I mean, you guys are a very tight unit. It's and I guess I should get to a question, but the brothers, I found it interesting because the heritage of Styx, of course, was the two brothers, John and Chuck, and now you have another set of brothers,
Right.
Lawrence and Terry, and they both have some incredible contributions to this new album, Circling from Above. I mean, their handprints are just all over it. The chemistry between them.
Absolutely, it's great, they had a repertoire of material with Gowan's band. Todd had worked with Terry and Lawrence for years, so they knew they had that chemistry together before that this even happened, and it just augmented everything in our band. So
So in getting to circling from above, and I'll show it to people. I was one of the lucky ones. I caught the autographed CD, and I've got the vinyl. So even though it's officially not released until mid-July, you can get this on You Discover Music. I believe the Talk Shop Live signed versions are out, but I'm sure these are all available at shows as well.
and
Um,
I think the Styx site also has them as yeah.
so the first one, the first song is Build and Destroy. Now that's your single. I have to say, when I first listened to the record, now I'd heard Build and Destroy is the single, but then in hearing Circling from Above leading into Build and Destroy, it's it's almost a much better experience. It almost sounds like those are just one song. And
More or
I
less.
know you're an album guy, so there must have been a conscious effort, at least when you tracked it. I mean, were they recorded around the same time? Is that just one of those moments of serendipity where they just really blend well together?
I think thematically the lyric content it went together, and we consciously did that. Circling from Above ended in A minor, and when Lawrence brought Build and Destroy a little bit later, it was also in the same key. And since lyrically we were kind of experimenting with Build and Destroy, man versus tech, and that sort of thing, it related to the space junk story of Circling from Above. So we kind of we said, oh, it ends in A minor. We can transition into Build and Destroy, and it worked out great. So it's a little bit premeditated, and then it's also a little bit happenstance when that happens.
Yeah, it's a beautiful transition. It really sets the stage for what is a wonderful album. And I mean, Todd, you mentioned him briefly as well, having played with Lawrence. But I mean, to me, this is the best. And Todd is known as one of the greatest drummers around.
Amazing.
But this is his best work so far, I've heard, in terms of his drumming. I was flabbergasted at how he could transition from sounding like he was in the White Stripes to being in the Who, but just being able to go from kind of the subtle nuances and sitting back to just being that rocker was pretty amazing. And I did read the material in terms of how he recorded the drum tracks, but I'll let you speak to that.
Well, 7 hours, the whole record. It was insane. We'd taken a couple days on the mission and Crash of the Crown, but frankly he doesn't need to. And we were getting funny stories. Yeah, we were getting close to the end of the day, and he had done pretty much 75% of the record. And I said, hey man, let's save this for tomorrow. And he's like, nope, I'm inspired. I want to keep going. And I'm like, well, I booked another day in this really expensive studio. So what am I going to do with it? And he's like, I'll come in and play tambourine, but I want to finish the record now. So he motored through, did the whole thing in 7 hours. It was remarkable. And then he came in and did tambourine the next day. We,
Yeah. Wow.
Tommy and I actually figured out ways to fill the time by, tracking some overdubs on Circling from Above with mandolins and 12-string guitars and things like that. So there's always things to do, but when you book out a really expensive Blackbird studio room, you're just trying to make sure you're getting the most out of it.
Yeah, and I mean, your credit is the producer, so obviously you are the producer. But I wonder, as a record producer of your own band, is there, is that a, can that be a good thing? Can that be a bad thing? Is there a little bit of both? Because you have a different relationship than, say, David Foster, who's coming in to produce a record because he's not a band member,
Right.
and now you are. So it's like you've got to work within, I don't want to say the politics of the band, because everything I've heard about the group is you guys just get on really well as human beings. But I still wonder how that relationship maybe impacted the production of the record.
I think it comes from not being in the band originally, and earning their trust as a producer, songwriter early on during the mission. And, we made two records that way. So by the time we got to the third one, there wasn't any, turn my guitar up louder, turn my drums up louder. Hey, why are you doing this? There wasn't, and the band doesn't really do that. They work together really well. Yeah, there's, of course, a little bit of creative friction here and there, but that's what makes great records.
Yeah. what was the most challenging track on this particular record?
Let's see. I would say to perform or to write or
All the way around. I mean, maybe from inception to. I mean, I think there's a song on there I read that was written originally in 2011. You know, I mean, you've got a lot of great stories in terms of the individual tracks. But I wonder if you ever go into the studio and something just isn't coming together, and then at some point it just sort of gels, or maybe you were thinking of abandoning it and you trotted through it.
typically I find that all the players in this band are really magnificent, and so there's not much they can't do. I think the challenge comes sometimes when the feel of the song isn't translating from the writing demo. The writing demo, is crafted for a long time till it's great, and then you have the fortunate and unfortunate, task to make it great again with the band, which they usually always augment things. But sometimes, once in a while, a certain feel, not with drums, with just something isn't working, and you just kind of you work at it. And but nothing is ever that challenging. We're really fast, and everybody's really good. And if there is something to talk out, we talk it out, and we get the result. So
Yeah, and one of the things that really struck me, I mean, you've had these three records, you know, The Mission, Crash the Crown, and now this one, is that on this particular record, and in fact, I think it was an interview I listened to with Charlie Brusco talking about how, if when they were making The Mission, they're like, it's still got to sound like a Styx song, still got to sound like a Styx song. There's there's something about this particular record. I don't know if it's the vocal arrangements or whatnot, that it doesn't sound like you have that pressure anymore. Like it has to sound like a Styx song. It does, but these vocal arrangements, especially the choruses, seem very unique and just really they just have a wonderful quality to them.
well, thank you. Yeah, yeah, the thread is always you look at the elements of what Styx is, and it's great harmonies, big stacks, sound like a car horn. Then these great guitar and keyboard parts. It's a very stylized thing, and I think if you have, of course, some of the original members, and you have some new members, and you still kind of adhere to that footprint, then it's going to sound like Styx, but it's going to be sound like Styx in 2025. The past is the past, and it's amazing. They have an amazing past, but this is what the band is now, and so it still sounds like Styx, but it also sounds like us and our collective influences. If that makes sense.
It makes complete sense, and I think when people hear the record, I mean, hopefully the expectation isn't going into it like, oh, this is going to be Grand Illusion 2025, because that record has held up. It's great for its time, but it is of its time. But again, I was, as I said, I before we came out, I was so moved the one time I texted somebody to tell them that I love the record. But the other thing I noticed too, again, in terms of well, actually, let me back up because I had this question, then it just popped out of my head. You sang lead on a couple of tracks, so this would be the first time that obviously you've sang lead on a Styx record. So then, to me, that's an important part of the band's history and legacy,
It is
because there's only X amount of people that have actually sang lead on a Styx song. I mean,
a high honor to be bestowed that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So
Um,
were you surprised when that came up, or was it just something you said during the course of the recording, like, oh, this is a song I wrote, I'm going to sing it, or did they say, hey, why don't you sing it?
no, because in years past we would. I mean, I'm a singer too and writer, and I'd kick over some stuff that I did fleshed out with my vocals, but I wasn't in the band, so of course they're not going to use that. And not to mention, you've got one of the greatest singers of all time, Tommy Shaw, who can sing that song, and he did that on a few of the songs in the past. And in these, since I was in the band, and it I guess the song that it resonated with the rest of them, like, oh, let's use that. That's great. You do it. It wasn't, somebody could do it better or any of that sort of thing. I think sometimes just certain songs suit certain people's voices. So I guess I didn't decide that. They said, yeah, we should use that, and that's how that works. I'm a producer, but I'm not gonna foist my own, I'm not gonna
Yeah.
inject my own, thing in there.
I think to some degree that speaks volumes though about the relationship between the band members, that it's not I mean, obviously JY and Tommy and to a degree, Chuck, this is the old guard, that they're part of the legacy, but they're also cognizant of the fact that like you said, the band is where it is now, and and everybody at least gets a seat at the table, which I think is great.
They've always, it's always a band. It's very, I mean, it's democratic, but I mean, when it comes to the creative part, it's a three-way democracy with Tommy Lawrence and I, as far as how the songs go. As far as everybody's input, everybody gets a say in just what, their feelings about it, and everybody works together really well. It's awesome. But if you look back, like I've noticed, whatever chapter they're in, and Glenn Burtnick sang songs on Cypher
Right.
Pop. I mean, he was in the band. He was a great writer. He was a performer. And so, yeah, you're right. They treat this like a band now, like Yes did in 1982. That was and that's kind of an old school way of going about it. But I think it gets great results, instead of just rehashing or retreading the past.
Yeah, Yes has come out with an album within the Cut from the Stars that I have, on vinyl back in here. Just a great record. And John Anderson, their former lead singer, has come out with a great record as well. But yeah, I like that. I like the fact that again, that the band is still making a band record and not just, oh well, we got to let Tommy sing every song or whatever. And those Glenn songs, I mean, it sounds like you're familiar with that record. I remember when I first heard it, it was like, it was so different. It was almost shocking because, this is a totally different voice. But in retrospect, I go back and I go, you're right. This is nice that they are comfortable enough in their own skin to do a song, to do a Glenn Burtnick song, and not say, Glenn, you're restrained to just be a member of Styx.
No, they're not. This organization is nothing like that.
Yeah.
It operates like a band should, where if you're in the band, you throw something out. If everyone likes it, then it's in the cards.
So I'm gonna say something, and I'm not exaggerating. I think the song "Forgive" may be the best Styx song of at least the 21st century. That song is for when people get the record, or people that have the record. I just absolutely love every millisecond of that particular recording. Sound the Alarm was one that really jumped off for me as well on Crash of the Crown, and I remember thinking, that was on the Mission. I'm sorry, but I mean, Forgive is just such an incredible song. What was it like the first time you heard the playback on that one? Because there's certain songs to me, I feel like the very first time you hear something and it clicks, you're like, wow, that's pretty special.
Yeah, I had put together the guitar picture, the acoustic thing with open G tuning, and I'm a huge Pink Floyd fan, so I just kind of it just gravitated that way, and kicked it over to Lawrence, and he put these amazing chorus melodies on there. I was like, it's great, and I threw down some melodies in the verse, but I'm like, you can't get better than Tommy Shaw on acoustic guitar. Acoustic guitar, Tommy Shaw song. It's like he's got the golden voice, and Crystal Ball, you name it, Sound the Alarm. There's all these great songs like that, and he sang the hell out of it. And it was when I first heard that, when I first heard him sing it, that's when I knew the song was special.
Yeah, it really is beautiful. And Tommy's voice just has not deteriorated. But I also think one of the advantages you had as a producer is you worked with him on his bluegrass record, The Great
Right.
Divide. So you kind of understand, I think everybody thinks of Tommy Shaw as a rock star, but what he really brought to the Styx sound was that sort of folky sensibility that we
Absolutely.
forget about.
Well, he's from Montgomery, Alabama, so he's a Southerner, and he grew up on bluegrass music. So that's in his DNA as much as rock and roll is. And his bluegrass record was fantastic. He's diverse in all things he does, and he's very talented. Yeah.
And again, we briefly mentioned Terry in terms of fitting into the band, maybe having an advantage of having a brother in the band or whatever. But his work on this particular record is great as well. And that's no disrespect to Ricky Phillips, who is again, one of those bass players that, I mean, he's a special kind of performer, and he has such a unique style. In some ways, though, I feel like Terry is a little closer to Chuck in terms of his approach on things. But again, he does have a sort of unique subtle quality that just blends really well with Todd. And that rhythm section is such an important component when it comes to especially a record.
He's a great writer and producer in his own right, and I think he understands the sensibilities. When it comes to the hits, he really plays Chuck's parts verbatim, and that's what made those songs great. If you want him to flash, he will flash, and he certainly did on this record. But he knows when to dial it in. Any good player knows, when to dial it in and when to throw it out there.
So I have a list. I'm gonna before I read all the Amanda Kagan, by the way, is your publicist, and I've been working with her for years, and she's been setting up interviews like this one for years. She's just a wonderful human being. So I want to say thanks to her. And I wrote down all these things the first time I listened through before I read anything about the songs of like what influences I heard. And I had the Beatles, the Who, Queen, ELO, Elton John, a little bit of Supertramp, and even some White Stripes in there.
Wow.
Are those is that some of your musical DNA, or at least some of the musical DNA that
Absolutely.
came in the band?
Every single one, and Pink Floyd, because that's a big one as well. But we and the rest of it's great when you write with people, because the rest of the guys actually have similar influence as well. I think all the great bands, Mick Jagger and Keith Richards got together. They loved the blues. They shared their records together. They had a common interest, and I think with Tommy and Lawrence and we all love those groups, and we inject some of that DNA in there. And it's not unfounded, because JY is also a big Who fan. You hear Great White Hope, you hear all these Who-ish Lorelei type songs in their early works, and so it's totally within reason to inject some of those influences into what we do.
Yeah, and it's just done very tastefully. I know I apologize. I'm trying to remember the track off the top of my head, and it's the one that you sing that you mentioned you were listening to Who's Next at the time that you were recording it, because the intro riff there also reminded me a little bit of that Billy Squires Everybody Wants You, but more of an
Yeah,
acoustic version. But
right.
it's just a rocker, man. It's just a great song.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it was a basically a fun experiment one day to, if you listen to Bargain and you listen to all these great Who songs from Who's Next, Pete Townsend is not playing crazy electric leads. He's playing crazy acoustic leads and licks everywhere. And it gives it a vibe. So I'm like, why don't I try that? And then impersonate Roger Daltrey to the best of my ability, which is not easy to do. But
Yeah.
he's Roger. But yeah, so that's kind of what it was, an experiment, the Who's Next chapter that never happened, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think I was talking to a coworker today about that the Lifehouse project, because he was getting into this thing about something to do with music being spiritual, and I said, oh yeah, that was kind of the whole concept of Who's Next, and there was this one song, Pure and Easy, that Townsend recorded later that kind of talked about that one universal note that they were seeking. But we could
Right.
go off on that buddy trail.
Yeah, but you're absolutely right. I mean, I'm a huge Queen fan. I'm a Who fan, Beatles, all those things. So, it was a lot of fun to just put these songs together, and almost like a rubber soul, where each one is pretty unique unto itself, and it's also a little bit different than the last two records, which is kind of what we want.
Yeah, and I noticed on the CD, because I had the CD before I had the vinyl, that you actually put on the CD side one and side two, so you delineated the two sides, which again you can't do that digitally if you're going to stream it, and you can't do it on a CD. But I
Right.
thought that was a really nice touch.
We make records. We make the AOR driven albums the band always has. We all love that idea, even if it is maybe an outdated notion given the current state of streaming and everything else. But we believe in vinyl still.
Yeah.
So yes, side one, side two is its own act one, act two of a play.
Are you a vinyl record collector still,
Oh,
or?
absolutely, love
Oh,
love it.
that's awesome. Fantastic. What is I mean, everybody knows what their first record was. What was yours?
Actually, I think it might have been Chicago 2.
Oh, wow. That's a good one.
Because I was little and I loved, huge Chicago fan, Stevie Wonder, you name it. The 70s was a treasure trove of amazing music. But then I think when The Wall came out, my little hands purchasing it was Floyd and Zeppelin and you name it.
That's awesome. Well, I don't want to. I don't want to not talk about the tour because this is a pretty special package. Closest you're coming to me, I'm in the Buffalo area, is Syracuse. So hopefully, I'll be able to catch you guys there. You've got, speaking of records, Kevin Cronin is with you guys. I mean, Styx is doing the Grand Illusion. Just the an incredible. I got to see them do Grand Illusion and Pieces of Eight on that tour. Man, I can't believe it's probably over 10 years ago now. But so you're doing Grand Illusion, some cuts from Circling from Above. Hopefully, at some point, you'll be singing lead on some songs later in this tour or next. And Ario's doing High Infidelity. Well, Kevin Cronin Band is doing High Infidelity. Was High Infidelity one of those records that you listened to growing up?
Kevin's such a that band's had such a history of amazing hits, and he's such a great writer. Of course, that record was around my house when it came out, and yeah, no, he's the whole package is just filled with amazing music that everybody's familiar with. Don Felder's Eagles catalog is, of course, Eagles, and then you've got Kevin Cronin's band doing all the REO stuff. It's terrific.
Yeah, I remember vividly when High Infidelity came out, and again, another record that has just really held up well. I mean, just the songwriting on it is tremendous. It seems like it's a lot of that stuff is kind of weaved together thematically, having to do with relationships and all that kind of stuff. But it's got to be kind of fun just watching the whole thing getting performed from beginning to end.
It's great. I love watching. We were side stage, every other night watching those guys just, kill it. It's awesome.
Are all three of you doing an encore together at the end, I mean, I know in the
No,
past,
no,
no,
no.
not
The
this one.
packages are kind of they're curfew driven. You have only
Mm.
so much time, and so everybody's kind of truncated into what they can do, and we get the most of it there that way. But no sitting in on this one. But I promise a great night of music. Everything you'll know everything, and to play the Grand Illusion down is a real treat for me personally.
Yeah, I mean, so many great just album tracks on that. Man in the Wilderness, which has popped in and out of the set list. Superstars. I mean, I don't know. It's just I can gush about that record and Come Sail Away. Who cannot sing Come Sail Away at the top of their
Absolutely fool
voice?
yourself. Yeah, you name it. It's great. We were playing in Austin a few days ago, and sadly, lightning came in and killed the show. But not before a giant torrential downpour on everyone came in. And this is during the castle walls, like the big,
Wow.
keyboard middle section, and everybody's freaking out. It's like it looked like a scene out of Lord of the Rings. It was something else.
Yeah, that's well, and I think what's interesting too about when you get these album shows. I mean, and this has got to be the same challenge for Kevin too, is that there's certain songs that everybody's familiar with at a certain part of the set. "Come Sail Away" is a traditional closer, so you have to play it at a different part of the set. So,
Oh, it's
mi-
weird playing it right
yeah,
there, man. I'm like, whoa, right now, this is like yeah, for years, like we play it right at the end, so.
yeah, yeah. Well, Kevin. I mean, I suppose "Keep on Loving You's" got to be pretty early in the set. I mean, "Don't Let Him Go." They'd opened up with that for years, so that's interesting. But and Don Felder, we got to talk about him because I don't. He wrote a great book. I don't know if you've ever had a chance to read it. It's one of the best rock
I have,
biographies.
yeah,
Yeah.
Heaven and Hell, is that what it's
Yes.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. I read that about 15 years ago. It was a really good read.
Yeah, it's a great read because I think it's honest enough that it feels authentic and entertaining, and it's not salacious. It's not like one of those books where he's talking about his conquests or his drug use. It's more of it really is a tale about a human being, and there's some very deeply personal stuff. But but as a singer, he I guess he had kind of a disadvantage in being in a group like the Eagles because A, it was established when he got in, and B, there were such other big personalities that it was a little bit harder for him to be able to sing his own songs and really rise to the top. And he's so talented. His solo material is great. And even when he sings the Eagles stuff, I was surprised at how close it sounds to some of the original versions.
He sounds great. He sounds great singing those songs. Yeah. And I can't speak to what happened within the band because I wasn't there, but
Right.
I mean, yeah, he's a talent. The guy's a monster guitar player, and he sings all those hits all night long, does a great job.
Yeah. So I guess we'll kind of close with, because I think I mentioned, I've had the honor and pleasure of interviewing JY a couple of times, and he mentioned you the last time we spoke about your relationship with Tommy and how you've really brought out some of Tommy's creativity, that you really changed him in terms of wanting to do albums and things like that. That it's a special relationship. How did that blossom? I mean, beyond, as I said, we talked at the beginning about Shaw Blades, but when did it really become that not only, I mean, it's got to be beyond a working relationship, I would assume.
Well, we're not sleeping together. Uh, so right before the Bluegrass record, he and Brad Davis, who I co-produced The Great Divide with, they had amassed a lot of the songs off The Great Divide, and he called me in towards the end through the post to help him finish it, and that's when I'd fly to LA and I'd work with him at his house there, and that's when he and I started to forge a writing relationship. And he doesn't need any help being creative. He's got ideas all the time. But, I think maybe getting excited because I had ideas all the time and he liked my style and I liked his, and the chemistry was very natural. In fact, the Red Storm was hatched there at that time from the Mission, and Michigan off this new album was also written there. And almost as they sound, I mean, their things, of course, progressed and they augmented for the album, but we hatched out a lot of songs, but we just didn't know. We're like, these are a little different. And so they sat on a hard drive for a little while until their time, seemingly came. But yeah, he and I, we just he liked my band American Drag. I, of course, am a fan of his, and it was just very simpatico, and very natural, working relationship with him writing. So that's where it started, I think.
Yeah, no, it's been a great ride from a fan perspective as well, just to be able to get new material. I mean, the only, I mean, I'm not just a fan of Styx. I mean, I loved his work in Damn Yankees, his solo work, and it's just great to be able to have new material from him in any way, shape, or form. But he's had such a diverse career. I mean, he's definitely not a one trick pony at all.
Not at all. Not at all. No. Yeah, it's great. Really. And thank you for listening to those albums. We love making them, we love, and we want them to be really good, unless we all agree that that's great and good is good and it doesn't matter. Just let's get it out there. So
I mean, as I said, Circling from Above to me is definitely the best Styx record in the 21st century. But just as a record, not judging it as a Styx record or anything else, it's just a great record. I mean, it really is just a fun. It still sounds new, it still sounds fresh, but there's so many of those other influences that I mentioned earlier, that the best way I can describe it is it's kind of a joyride, and it's emotional. There are songs
yeah.
that do tug at you a little bit, and there's songs that get you going, and there's that prog component, but man, it feels complete. And I think it's got to be tougher for a band that has been around for a long time to be motivated to do a record. And it's just good to hear a record that you clearly, it's just, there's been a lot of thought into it, if that makes sense.
Oh, well, thank you. I mean, everybody puts their best foot forward, and everyone's really excited to do it. We just love making new songs, and the song itself will excite the members of the band and myself to just want to, keep charging at it.
And I got final question. I mean, I mean, could you envision someday? I know you did full Mission shows. I'm not certain if you did full Crash the Crown shows. Is there any thought or possibility of like a residency of doing this full album from beginning to end?
Well, that's only if everyone buys the record. No,
Okay.
and was Mission sold very well, and it was kind of a shock in the industry at the time that and it did really well, and I think that prompted the the need to maybe play the show live, and maybe people will come and see this event. And Crash of the Crown was unfortunately the victim of post COVID, which we just had to get back out there and start playing the hits, and do what was familiar for people. And we played a lot of the Crash songs in the set,
Yeah.
but we've never played that one down. um but I think Circling from Above, depending on how popular it gets, we would be more than happy to play that down.
Yeah, well, as I said, I will be shocked if it doesn't do very well. So
Right.
I can't recommend it enough. It's just a fantastic record, and my friend Joey Sudo and I will be doing a review of it coming up soon. So we'll certainly have some great words to say. But in all honesty, thank you for all you do for Styx, for the fans, and everything. And this has been a real kind of bucket list moment. I like to. I'm proud of all the members of Styx that I've been able to interview. You know, Tommy eludes me, but I understand he's probably busy and not a big fan of interviews. But you know, I had the chance to meet him when I was a kid, and it's just such a joyride to be a Styx fan now and at all times.
Well, thank you for listening and supporting the band. You know, it means a lot, and we